Hello, good people. I am back as promised. So, in a previous video, I spoke about some of the complications that I suffered post surgery for endometriosis, and I suffered two major complications after my operation for endometriosis. And it's funny, as I was trying to prepare and plan for this video, I was trying to remember which complication came first. So, one was urine retention, and the other one was to do with the bowel because they had to cut away a section of the bowel and join it back together again. That join actually ruptured, and I ended up needing a bag, an ileostomy bag, which was attached to the the right side of my abdomen. I should say my tummy because it was hanging outside. Um, and it's funny how because I laugh about it now, but back then I was pretty traumatized by everything that was happening to me, which just seemed to be beyond my control. I think that was the most challenging part of it. My body was not functioning the way it should be functioning at one point, and it was a really, really, really difficult period. So much so that now, when I look back, when I first started to recall and go back in time to remember what happened when, my brain just clearly has gone into that mode of you don't need to know about that anymore, you don't need to recall that information, gone. But if I sit down and force myself to think about it logically, I believe it was a urine retention that happened first. Because as the doctors described it to me, and I didn't have a clue what urine retention was, I didn't even know such a thing existed. Um, if you imagine when you have a major cut to your a major cut to your abdomen, which is the operation. So the incision started from my belly button down to the top of my pelvic bone. So we're talking a good maybe 6-8 inches. And they went in there, cut me open and got to the bowel, cut a section away, chucked it, moved some surrounding organs to one side and the others to the other side. Organs can get traumatized, in a nutshell. And my bladder was one of the ones that didn't like what was going on. It's never had any foreign objects prod, poke, push it, shove it. So, literally, what happened was my bladder went into shutdown mode and wouldn't function normally like it should. So, effectively, one day I tried to pee and I realized that I couldn't pee in the normal way. What actually happened, or what tends to happen when you have major surgery, in my case, is that I had a catheter inserted into my bladder so that in the days following my surgery, I wouldn't have to move out of bed. There was no need for me to get out of bed to have to go and pee. I was nil by mouth anyway for a good few days, maybe a week or so. So my bowels, it would have taken a while for my bowels to kickstart and start to work in the normal way that they're supposed to work as well. So I had the catheter in, and effectively what that was doing was just automatically draining the urine from my system, from my bladder, into a bag, which the nurses would then empty on a regular basis. So after a few days, what the doctors would then do is take that catheter out and expect that the patient would just go back to the normal way that they used to pee, like we all do, like all of us women do. In my case, when I tried to do that, it didn't happen. My bladder had literally gone into, I can't deal with all this. Not happening. No can do. Sorry, you have traumatized me. You've poked and shoved and done all sorts to me. Not happening. I refuse to work. I'm going on strike. Literally. Sorry, guys, if I make light of it, but effectively, that is what happened. I tried to pee. Nothing came out. I had the sensation my bladder was full. I had that pressed feeling that you get when you need to go for a pee. Nothing came out. I sat on the loo. I tried all sorts. Nothing came out. I remember some of the nurses, bless them, giving me all kinds of advice. The one that stood out the most was one that said, well, when you try and pee, maybe just turn the tap on. Sometimes hearing running water might, create something in the brain that helps you naturally pee, like, you would normally. Tried it. Mm-mm. It wasn't happening. I had gone into something called urine retention. And this was quite something. I remember at the time thinking, I don't understand this. This is beyond my comprehension, because I came into hospital with a gynecological condition, or at least so I thought, endometriosis. This is now veering into new territory. I was now having to deal with urologists who specialize in all things to do with urology. And a decision was then made to recatheterize me. So this time I was given an indwelling, I think what they called an indwelling catheter. And it was effectively this catheter in a tube form that was inserted into the urethra that goes directly into the bladder. Forgive me, all you medical students, if I get the names wrong. But effectively, it was a tube that had to go into my bladder, so that every time my bladder got full, the tube would just drain out the fluid, the urine, to a bag which is strapped to my leg. Pretty clever, huh? Not knocking technology, and grateful for the fact that, obviously we have medical interventions and, medical props that can help us get through life, because what a thought. If we didn't have things like catheters, I went into urine retention, how on earth would I have been able to empty my bladder? That was good. What was not so good is the fact that this wasn't meant to be. It's the fact that this isn't how I envisaged I would be leaving hospital. So I ended up leaving hospital with this indwelling catheter, coming home to carry on my convalescing, and just being in a state of shock for quite some time, thinking, how did I end up here? I'm dealing with all the recuperating and all the pain from the surgery, and having to walk around gingerly and not being able to eat, and all the things that you go through when you're recuperating from major surgery. And on top of that, I'm now dealing with this catheter because I can't pee the normal way. That was tough, guys. That was really tough. And this carried on for a number of weeks. And during that period, I was going back and forth. I had my outpatient appointments, seeing countless consultants, mainly urologists, while they were trying to figure out what on earth was going on. I was going for various scans and tests and all sorts, given medication. It was a nightmare. It really was. And there's nothing worse than when you can see that the medical doctors were baffled and couldn't quite work out what the issue was, what was causing my bladder to go into shutdown mode. But what was worse was them not knowing whether it was permanent and whether, in fact, the bladder would ever recover. That was hard. That was really hard. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure how I got through it. Those were the days when I wasn't as close to my faith as I am now. I didn't pray as regularly. I didn't. I always believed. I believe in God. I know that much, that there is a higher being out there. But I wasn't as close to him as I am today, to be able to get me through those dark periods, to be able to get me from A to B, to be able to know, like I know, that it was just a period that I was going through. It was just a valley that I was going through, and that I was going to come out at the other end. So when the doctors expressed doubt, that doubt rubbed off onto me. And I wondered myself in my dark moments whether this was indeed my lot, and whether I was just going to end up having to use catheters all the time. So a decision was made for me to start using these, portable well, yeah, I guess they are portable catheters, as opposed to it being indwelling and strapped to my leg. I was given one of these babies. Um, there's a little hook there that you can use to hook it to wherever you are, or you have an adhesive bit that you peel off and you can stick to the wall. And the idea is that you take the catheter out. I was taught how to self-catheterize. In other words, use the catheter. It's about this wide. I'd literally stick it into my bladder through the urethra, drain my bladder, and obviously I'd have to do that several times a day, each time my bladder got full. And once you've done that, you can stick that used catheter back into this packaging and then safely dispose of it. So I had to walk around with a few of these in my handbag, because obviously there was a time when, after I started to feel a little bit better, stronger, maybe a month, 2 months into my recuperation, and I felt like I wanted to, head out into the world and feel normal again, do things like maybe going to the shops or, going out for a meal with friends and what have you, I would have to have a few of these in my bag for when my bladder got full and I had to empty my bladder. And this was my life, guys, for a period of up to a year. This was my life. Urine retention. I had to have this with me wherever I went, not knowing whether this was always going to be the way my life would end up. Well, as I said, I always had my faith. I may not have been as close to God as I am these days, and I may not have known beyond all reasonable doubt that it was just a temporary thing I was going through. But somewhere at the back of my mind, I just knew that this wasn't my lot and that I was just going through something. And I knew that one day I would heal. I would get better, and my bladder would revert to normal functioning. I had to become incredibly well versed with how the human body works. You learn so much about yourself when you are going through difficulties. I mean, it was quite a tough thing to want your body to be functioning normally again, like it should do, and it just wouldn't. So I had to research, I had to study, I had to understand how the bladder works, I had to understand how the bowels work, the interrelationship that they have. I had to watch my diet, I had to understand, the effect having a full bowel would have on the surrounding organs and my bladder. And yeah, I had to learn about my system in an intimate way, which is not such a bad thing. Not such a bad thing. And slowly but surely, step by step by step, I started to get to a point where slowly but surely it began to recover. My bladder would start to repair and heal itself over time, over time. And it would start with a trickle and then it would disappear. So one day I'd get really excited, I'd be able to pee normally. And I think, yeah, it's coming back. And then it would revert to not function again. And I'd have to carry on using the catheters. So there was an up and down period where it seemed like I was getting better. And then no, it was going back to where I was before. And I just had to keep using the catheters all the time. But slowly but surely it healed. And I got to a point where I was able to just get rid of the catheter altogether. Wow, that was quite a trip down memory lane. But I'm pleased that I've shared that urine retention story with you. So for any woman that's going through something similar or even something worse as a result of endometriosis, or even any other condition where you've had to have surgery and you've suffered complications and you feel like your body might not ever go back to functioning normally again, know that it is a lie. It will happen. You will get better. You will get stronger. Keep the faith. Stay tuned. Share, like, subscribe. Cheers.